Hi everyone, welcome back to the series in Business Analytics course. This is going to be lecture 10, and in this lecture we are going to do some PYQs on week 5. As I have discussed in the theory lecture, that week 5 contains problems related to optimization. So we would be dealing with profit and revenue maximization and primal to dual conversion. So these are the two main topics which we are going to study. So without any further delay, let's just get started. Okay. So this is our first question. Um, just to give you a heads up that a lot of time in your exam when you would be doing business analytics course, you might see a lot of questions which are theoretical, comprehension based. So you won't be directly given a problem statement in mathematical terms. You first need to read the problem statement and then realize what is the mathematical formulation corresponding to this question. So this is just an example for the same question. So let me just read it out for you. So the question says, Fake Money FM is an investment consulting firm. Dr. Milo has approached Fake Money with rupees 1 lakh. FM top panelist recommends that, etc., etc. You can read these things. The main point here was that Dr. Milo wants to invest 1 lakh rupees. Okay. And then he has said, we have three investment opportunities: oil industry, steel industry, government bonds. And then he has given some conditions. So this is the conditions which are given, that neither industry, oil or steel, should receive more than 50,000. Okay. So that means you cannot invest more than 50,000 in either of the industry. Okay. Because this is like saying, you have to invest in all the three, right? Something like that. Because if you invest more than 50,000 in any industry, it means that can be a problem. So, you cannot invest more than 50,000 in oil or steel. Okay. So that is one condition. Second says government bond should be at least 25% of steel industry investment. So whatever you are going to invest in steel industry, let's say I'm investing 40,000 in steel industry, I need to invest 25% of that in the government amount. So these are some restriction which the person owning money, Dr. Milo, is suggesting you. The investment in Bongo oil, which is basically high return but high risk investment, cannot be more than 60% of the total oil industry investment, right? So in the oil industry, you have two options to invest. First one is Dhoka oil, which is giving you 7.3% of rate, and Bongo oil is giving you 10.3% of return, right? So Bongo oil, when you are investing, let's say 10,000, 20,000, whatever amount you are investing in oil industry as a whole, you cannot invest 60% of that, more than 60% of that amount alone in Bongo oil. You need to make sure that whatever amount you are investing together in the oil industry, Bongo oil should only get less than 60%. You cannot invest more than that. So these are the conditions which are given to you. So now let's see what is the question. The question says, first question, how many decision variables are present in the standard form of primal? So if you recall, what is a decision variable? Decision variable is a thing which you basically decide in the problem statement. How many things to produce? Here we are deciding how much to invest, right? So what will be our decision variable, right? Because we have five investment opportunity. Here we are not going with the industry, right? If you read, it might seem like you can, uh, take numbers like, how much to invest in oil industry, how much to invest in steel industry, how much to invest in government bonds. But that cannot uh, help you with these conditions, because these conditions specifically go for companies, right? You see, Bongo oil should not be more than 60% of this thing. So these are some conditions. That is why your decision variables would be five. So let me write here. So first part would be five decision variables, and those would be basically investment amount in these five companies. So if I'm investing, let's say X1 here, X2 here, and X5 in the last one, these are my decision variables. Okay. So these five things are my decision variables. Now the question says, how many constraints, excluding the non-negativity constraint, are present in the standard form of primal? This word standard is very important. So now if you formulate this part, let's see this thing. What are the conditions? So let's read the passage again. These are the conditions. First condition says, Dr. Milo wants to invest entire 1 lakh rupees, right? So you need to make sure that all these X, right, these things add up to 1 lakh rupees, right? So this is my first condition. Now, second condition is neither industry, oil or steel, should receive more than 50,000. So how much investment are you doing in oil industry? Oil industry may I'm investing X1 plus X2, right? Because X1 goes in your what do I say? Dhoka oil, and X2 goes in Bongo oil, right? So this is what you have. So this is one of my constraints. Similarly, I will have X1 plus X2. This is my oil industry investment. X1 plus X2 is the total amount which I will be investing in the oil industry. What does it say? Neither industry, oil or steel, should receive more than 50,000. So that means these two things, X1 plus X2, should be less than equal to 50,000, right? Similarly, you have steel industry, which is X3 plus X4. This thing should also be less than 50,000, right? So this is two new constraints. Now the other one was government bond should be at least 25% of steel industry investment. So let me write that. What is that? Government bond is X5. This should be at least, right? That means this should be greater than equal to 25%. So 25% becomes 0.25 of the steel industry. What was steel industry? X3 plus X4. Okay. So this is another condition. Now the fifth condition was here investment in Wongu oil, right, which is X2. The high return, high risk cannot be more than 60% of the total oil industry investment. So that is X2 should be less than equal to 0.6, 60% of total oil industry, which is X1 plus X2. Okay. So these are the constraints which you have. Now, a lot of people did this mistake. They will read this and they will think that these are our constraints in the standard form of the primal, but no, these are not the constraints in the standard form of the primal. These are just the mathematical notation. If you remember in the theory lecture, I told you in the standard form, if you are having a maximization problem, all the constraints should be either less than or less than equal to. But if you see here, this one is equal to, this one is greater than equal to, right? So you need to convert these into some format. So how do I convert these? First constraint, this one. Basically, xi should be equal to 1 lakh. I'm using L, so you can see this thing. I told this trick that whenever you have an equality constraint, we are going to use, break it down into two things. I will say sigma xi less than equal to 1 lakh, and then similarly sigma xi greater than equal to 1 lakh, right? If you follow these two constraints together, then by default you are only having intersection of equality. So if you follow both of these two constraints, you are by default obeying this original constraint. So that is how your equality constraint would be broken down into these two constraints. And again, if you see this thing that, this is greater than equal to, this is greater than equal to, we don't allow greater than equal to. So how do we do that? We will simply multiply by -1. So minus x5 should be less than equal to minus 0.25 and x4 plus x3. Similarly, this one as well will become minus sigma xi should be less than equal to minus 1 lakh. So now you will have total 6 constraints. Okay. Why 6 constraints? One constraint is this one. So let me add numbering. So this is one constraint. This is another constraint in standard form of primal, right? So this comes from this only. So this is one, then this is 1, 3, this is 1, 4, this is 1, 5, and this is 1, 6. And this is the same thing which we converted here. So that is how it got broken into 2. So always remember, whenever you have an equality constraint, you need to break down that equality constraint into two different inequality constraints, and you also need to change the signs accordingly. If it was a minimization problem, I would change sign of this thing, because in minimization, standard primal would always have greater than equal to or strictly greater than. It cannot have less than equal to or less than. Okay, so just multiply by -1 and you will see this thing. So we have 6 constraints. Okay, so how many decision variables are there? 5. What are our decision variables? How much to invest in each specific investment opportunity, X1 to X5, these things. Then how many constraints in the standard form of primal? This is going to be 6. Then the question says, how many constraints how many constraints excluding non-negativity constraint are present in the dual, which is based on the standard form of primal. So if you remember, this is a straightforward question from the table, which I showed here in the theory lecture, that whenever you have your primal form in standard primal, basically this one, all the constraints are obeying that less than equal to greater than equal to situation, then you can directly use this table. The question was asking number of constraints in my dual. So basically that would be equal to number of decision variable in my primal. So how much do we have decision variable in primal? That is 5. So this is the same thing which would come here. Okay. So now let's see the next part. Next part says how many, oh no, this one. If the FM has suggested below distribution of investment, then how much money, total money is projected to be in hand at the end of first year. So basically, this is the suggestion for investment you have, right? So the financial analyst at that company, fake money, has suggested you to invest 20,000 in this, 30,000 in this, 40,000 in this, and 10,000 in government bonds. They are simply asking you what is the total money at the end of year, right? So it's quite simple. You have the rate of interest here, right? 7.3, 10.3, and all that stuff. You just need to multiply them, right? So just a simple example, let's say if you are investing 100 rupees at 6% rate of interest, you will end up having 100 plus the 6 rupees of interest, which is 106, right? So this is the simple work which we need to do here, just like this only. So let me write back what we need to do. So we have what Bhoka oil is having 20,000, Bongo oil is having 30,000. So it would become 20,000. Let me write 20K. This would be multiplied with 1.073. Why? Because 7.3, right? If you convert 7.3 into decimal, that would become 0.73. And then we are adding 1 because we need total thing, right? Just like we did this thing, we need to get 106 here. How do you get 106 here? You multiply 100 with 1.06, right? Let me show you. 100 into this was 1 plus 6%. So 6 divided by 100. Okay, you see this thing? We are getting 106. So this is what I'm doing here as well. I'm just writing that same thing in the quiz form, and you can do this thing yourself. Not a very tough thing. We have 10,000 into 4.5% of return, right? So it would become 10,000 into, we have 1.045. Okay, so you will solve this thing, you will end up having 1,08,000. So yeah, this is what you will end up having, 1,08,000, and this is what you have. Actually, they also accepted the answer 8,000 alone later. So, you know, if you are just calculating the extra interest we are getting, let's say you are only calculating 6 here, right? So that was also accepted because maybe few students got confused, but the correct answer was 1,08,000, basically entire amount, because the question does say, but I think a lot of students got confused and they only calculated this part, the returning part. So they still allowed that thing. So this is what you have, 1,08,000, or you can say 8,000 interest. So this was also accepted later. That was not a problem. Okay. So the next question says, okay, this was not C, this was C, and this is E. So the next question is, if the FM has suggested the below distribution of investment, then how many decision variable in dual will have non-zero value. Okay, so the question is explicitly asking how many decision variable in dual are going to have non-zero value. How do we find this thing? So whenever you face any question which asks you, number of dual variables which are going to be zero or non-zero, that strictly is a, that's a good hint. You need to go revisit the binding and non-binding constraints. So go to the theory lecture. I have explained what is a binding constraint, what is a non-binding constraint. So whenever you solve a LPP problem, and let's say you got some optimal solution, you put those values in the constraints and you check if my LHS is equals to RHS. Every time LHS equals to RHS, that means it's a binding constraint. Every time LHS is not equal to RHS, that means it's a non-binding constraint. And for all the binding constraints, it is proven that whenever you will have a binding constraint, the decision variable corresponding to that constraint is going to be non-zero. It's fully assured. And whenever you have a non-binding constraint, it may be zero. Okay. So this is what we have. And so, you know, we have this given to us. So let's just, see how we can use this to get the answer. So this is the investment they have given to us, and we have certain constraint. So first constraint, if you remember, was coming from this part, right? Basically, they should add up to 1 lakh, and these two constraints basically make sure that only. So instead of checking these two constraints separately, you can actually just check the original constraint, which was all the xi's should add up to 1 lakh. So you can check this, or you can, if you want, you can check these two separately. That does not really make a difference. So let's just check that. So first constraint is going to be this one, sigma xi should be less than 1 lakh. So let me write that. First constraint was sigma xi should be less than equal to 1 lakh. And your second constraint was negative of sigma xi, right? This should be less than equal to negative of 1 lakh, right? So let's just open the calculator and see what we can do. We have 20,000 plus 30,000 plus 40,000 plus 10,000, right? If you see this thing, this is 1 lakh. So basically, if I put this value here, this and this would match. So basically, this constraint is correct, and this is a binding constraint, right? Similarly, this constraint is also having LHS equals to RHS, therefore, this is also binding. Now, the next constraint was this one. We had 1, 2, 3. So let's just take this one. X1 plus X2 should be less than 50,000. X3 plus X4 should be less than 50,000. So third was x1 plus x2 should be less than equal to 50,000. Similarly, fourth was x3 plus x4 should be less than equal to 50,000, right? So let's just check the thing. First one is x1 is 20,000, x2 is 30,000. So yes, 20,000 plus 30,000 becomes 50,000. So this is also a binding constraint. Fourth one, x3 plus x4. If you see x3 is 0 and x4 is 40,000. So 40,000 should be less than, this is your constraint. LHS becomes 40K and RHS is 50K, right? So LHS is not equal to RHS. Therefore, this is not a binding constraint, not binding. You are not checking if the solution is following the constraint, because if it is the solution of primal, then it is supposed to follow the constraint, right? That is why we solve this thing. So it will obviously follow the constraint, but we are checking if the LHS, right, the value after putting the solution is equal to the coefficient which is written on the right hand side. Okay, so this was our this thing. So now let's see the fifth part. Fifth part says, what was that? Fifth part was this one. X5 should be greater than this thing, and we converted into this part. So you can write it down again like this. Minus ka x5 should be less than this. You can actually check the original one as well. So let me write the constraint. The constraint is x5 should be greater than 0.25 times x3 plus x4, right? So x5 was 10,000. let me write that. So we have x5 should be greater than equal to basically 0.25 times x3 plus x4. This is my original constraint, right? So I will check this thing. X5 is 10k. Okay. What is this thing? 0.25 x3 plus x4, 0 plus 40k. So this will become 10k. So 10k equals to 10k. Therefore, this is also binding. Similarly, 6.1 is x, I think what it is. X2 should be less than this thing. So we will put this thing here again. X2 should be less than equal to zero point 0.6 times of x1 plus x2, right? Yes, x1 plus x2. x1 plus x2. x1 plus x2 would be 50,000. If you take zero point 0.6 of 50,000, so we have 20,000 plus 30,000. Okay. Multiply this by 0.6. You end up having 30,000. X2 itself is 30,000. This is also 30,000. So both are meeting. Therefore, this is also a binding constraint. So if you see, we end up having 5 binding constraints, right? This is a binding constraint. This is a binding constraint. This is a binding constraint. This is also a binding constraint. And this is also a binding constraint. Therefore, the number of decision variable in the dual which have non-zero value is going to be 5. Okay, this is 5, and this we have already calculated. They said 1,08,000, or you can just write 8,000. I would say in exam prefer this approach, but they accepted both the things. So yeah, either you write just the interest part or this total thing. So yeah, this is the first question. I hope you got this opportunity how to read a passage and how to convert a business statement into a mathematical formulation. So this is how you convert it. You might see we did not actually convert the given mathematical LPP entirely to a dual problem statement. Most of the time, you don't have to do these things. You just need to remember the table, and they will ask you these things: how many decision variables, how many uh, constraints, how many decision variable in dual, how many constraint in dual. So these kind of questions are quite common. They won't ask you to convert it entirely because the exam question paper is type of MCQ. So that is how they ask you. So let's see the next question. The next question says the demand for product is estimated to follow a relationship, this thing, 1444 minus 3p square. Okay. So this is our equation of demand. What is that? 1444 minus 3p square. Okay. This is what you have. Here P is the selling price of the product. The product is made at price rupees 50 per unit. Given this information, answer the following thing. If you intend to maximize revenue, what is the optimal value of P? So here, if you mug up the formula, this question would go wrong, because if you see this question is not having a linear demand response curve, right? This question is having D and P, but P is raised to the power 2. So this is not the linear demand response curve, and you cannot use the direct formula. So you need to go with the basic approach, find the revenue function, and then take the first order condition, do that stuff. So this is our demand function. So how do we write revenue as a function of price? Revenue is basically demand, which is function of price, into price. Okay. So basically it becomes 144p minus 3pq. This is what your revenue function is. Now I will take first derivative with respect to price and set it to 0. What is that? 1444 minus 3 3s are 9, p square should be equal to 0. So this is the condition which you have, and now you need to check it. Which value will satisfy this one, right? So let's see how we do this, and you will write your this thing again, like p square is equals to 1444 by 9, and let's just use calculator here at this point, you know um 144 divided by 9. This is what you have, and you want to take square root. Okay, square root of 144 divided by 9. Okay, you end up having 4.222. So this price which you are seeing here is basically going to give you that. And let me just see if we have done it correctly. 1444, oops, divided by 9, you have 160.4. So, okay, I think we did something wrong. Let me raise it to the power 0.5. Oh, sorry, yeah, this is going to be 12 point something. Yes. So just be cautious of your calculations. Let me write it like this. So P is going to be 12.666. Okay. You can also calculate the second order condition and check if that is basically, less than equal to 0. You can do that. But in exam, I mean, if you want to skip, if you are, see, after solving the equation, if I was getting two different values of P, then I definitely need to do that. But here, because you will get plus minus, right? I will get plus minus 12.66. And it is obvious that price cannot be minus ka 12.66. Therefore, the obvious answer is 12.66. But if I was getting two different answer, let's say 12.66 and 13 point something, so then I need to know where is the maxima actually occurring, because first order condition only guarantees this is a point of optimum, right? It might be a minima, it might be a maxima, or it can also be a saddle point. So if you have different answers, then you need to go with the second order condition. But if you are sure you are getting only one valid answer, just like this situation, we were getting plus minus 12.666, but only plus is valid because price cannot be negative. So that is one thing. So this is your answer. The second part says this thing. If you intend to maximize the profit, then what is the optimal value of P? So how do we write profit? Pi. How do we write this thing? Profit is basically demand, which is function of price. This thing should be multiplied with P is the selling price and C is the cost we occur, right? So this is what we have, and this is what you will have. Demand was 1444 minus 3P square into P minus, I think it was rupees 50. So this is what you have here. And if you will solve this equation, then you will get something different. Okay. So you will end up having a 3D, sorry, third degree polynomial, right? Basically something in power cube. And then you need to again go back to the same thing, take the derivative and do these things. So let me write the direct equation actually. I have already calculated it. It would become minus 3p cube, okay, minus 3p cube plus 150p square, and then we will have uh, plus 144p, then we will have minus 72200, minus 72200, basically multiplying these two things. So this is what you have. And now, because we wanted to maximize the profit, it's quite obvious. I will say, take derivative of this profit function with respect to price, equate that to 0. Now, you will do this thing. What will be the equation coming out? It will become minus 3 will come down, p square plus this will be 150 into 2, that would be 300 p again plus 1444. This thing should be equal to 0. Now here you see I am getting what? It is a uh, quadratic equation, right? We are getting something in terms of p square, basically ax square plus bx plus c. So now you can directly use Sridharacharya formula and you can get the value of p, basically that thing. And here you will see that you will get two different values of p. So one would be minus 4.28 minus 4.28, and the other would be, this is P1 and P2 would be 37.60. So it is obvious that this is not acceptable because price cannot be negative. We are not dealing in a situation where someone is paid to purchase something, right? This basically means that only positive price means what you are giving, negative price means you are given money to purchase something. So this is not an ideal situation, not something which we assume in our basic assumption. So that is why we are ignoring this case, but this is the correct answer. And just to highlight a few things more, I will like to say that even this answer which you are seeing is not entirely correct. I will tell you why. Because if you will calculate demand at this price, price is equals to 37.60, it will come out to be negative. So again, you cannot take such a price at which demand becomes negative, right? Because that is, something again not actually fitting this situation. If you have a price which is giving you negative demand, then you will not go into that situation. So mathematically, yes, this price 37.60 is maximizing the equation. Mathematically, yes, but from the business sense and from the actual sense, when you are operating a business, you will not go into this condition, because the moment you update your price to 37.60, your demand will fall into negative. So you will never go to that price. So yes, mathematically, it can maximize the profit, but in real life, it will not happen. And that is why this question was made open marks, only the second part, which is basically profit maximization. So that is one thing. And yeah, so be very cautious. In exam, I don't expect anyone to cross check these things, put the price back and check the demand. So mathematically, if you are getting something, I will say you need to write this answer. And as you know, they only give open marks to student who answer the question. So if you left this question, you would not get any marks. But if you wrote this answer, you are mathematically correct. But let's say you even wrote something wrong, you did some mistake in the calculation and you wrote something else, still you will get marks. So that is why always answer all the questions which you are getting in the exam, and make sure at least you are mathematically correct, right? Because no one goes back and check this thing, is the demand correct or not. This was just something which discovered later when someone showed the graph on discourse. So it was just by chance we discovered this thing and this became open marks. But I expect everyone to at least mathematically maximize the work, right? So remember the thing, how to find revenue function, revenue is demand into price. How to find profit function, profit is demand into your price minus the cost you are occurring per unit. Okay. And then you just need to take first order condition, second order condition, and you are good to go. Okay, a similar question. Say a demand response curve is modeled as constant elasticity curve. Okay, constant elasticity curve. If Q1 is 2400 units, Q2 is 1500 units, P1 is this, P2 is this, then what is the elasticity of the curve? Okay. So if you remember, this is how we write the equation. Demand is equals to C times e to the power minus epsilon. Again, just to remind you that we are dealing with a specific case of elasticity. And in this case of elasticity, basically the demand price elasticity, if the price increases, demand decreases. That is why you are seeing this negative epsilon, because it is obvious, right? If you put something in the negative power, that means if P is keep on increasing, D will keep on decreasing. So to satisfy your law of demand, that is why we have this thing. And in few textbook, you might see the positive sign, so don't get confused. Uh, in this course, if you want to get marks specifically in the business analytics part, because that is only dealing with the demand elasticity, sorry, price elasticity of demand. So we will only follow this notation. Okay. So how do we find elasticity? You have been given this thing, right? So the first question says 2400 is equals to C times P is given as 100. So 100 to the power minus epsilon. This is equation one. Second one is 1500 units equals to C times 200 to the power minus epsilon 2. Divide equation 1 by equation 2 and you are good to go. So this is what you will have. 2400 by 1500 equals to 100 by 200 to the power minus epsilon. And if you remember, I have also put some formula in short notes. So epsilon is basically log of Q2, or you can say demand 2 by demand 1. Let me write D2 by D1 upon ln P1 by P2. So make sure to exchange the order, and that is how you have this thing. And you can just put in the values in the calculator and you will get the answer. Okay. So just find the correct values and you will be good to go. So this is what we have, and it would become ln 2400 by 1500, ln 24 by 15, I have removed the 0, upon ln, we will have the opposite work. So that would be 200 by 100. So this is what we have, 200 by 100. Okay, so you can solve this thing, and because this is d2, I think, yeah, I mean, you can put d1 d2 and p2 p1, that is the still same thing, that does not really change anything. You will still get the answer here, which would be equal to 0.6780. So you can solve this, you will get 0.6780. You just need to remember this epsilon is coming via this equation, so you take the logs, everything comes in the, this epsilon comes in the base, so you end up having log d1 by d2 is equals to minus epsilon log p1 by p2, and you separate out things and you send minus inside, so this exchanges the order. So this is what you have, log d2 by d1 upon ln p1 by p2, and you can also change this to, like this, log d1 by d2 upon log p2 by p1. So I think I have used this thing here, and this is how you get this thing, 0.680. And it is quite obvious that this is basically telling you, if I increase my price by 1 unit, my fractional change in quantity would be 0.6780. So this is the next question, which says primal formulation of the following uh, production planning problem, where objective function is to maximize the total for profit, and it is formulated as below: maximize 225 times x1 plus 200 times x2 plus 165 times x3, subject to the following constraints, and these are the constraints. Now they're asking you how many constraints will be present in the dual formulation after converting the primal to standard form, right? So you have this primal with you, okay, and they're asking you to convert it into standard form. So if you see, this primal is already in the standard form, right? Because it's maximization and all the constraints here, the first four constraints, these are all in the less than equal to, or you can say less than, right? We have all the less than equal to, right? So that is why this constraint is already in the standard form. We do not want our non-negativity constraints in this format. So that is why in general you will see we this is an obvious constraint, but we don't write it explicitly. So these are 7 constraints which you have, and now the question is asking how many constraints will be present in the dual formulation. So how do we get constraints in dual? If you remember the table, number of decision variable in the primal problem becomes number of constraints in the dual. So here we have 3 decision variable, 1, 2, 3. Therefore, you will have 3 constraints in the dual of the, uh, you know, the question was how many constraints will be present in the dual. Yes. So because you have 3 decision variable in primal, therefore you will have 3 constraints in the dual. Okay. And then we have how many decision variable will be present in the dual formulation. So this is the question. How many decision variable will be present in the dual formulation? So because we have 4 constraints here which are non-negativity, therefore these 4 constraints would convert into 4 decision variable. Again, we are not including the non-negativity constraint because they are obvious, and this is not something which we include. So in general, they will explicitly tell you to exclude non-negativity constraint while counting. So be cautious, and I think it's something which you can take into mind. Okay, so this is what you have, and yes. So if the optimal solution from the primal is 1701 2196 and x3 is this 293, then how many decision variable will have the value 0? Okay, so we will basically check how many LHS equals to RHS condition we are having, and based on that we can comment if if that is a binding constraint and if it is not. So if you will see this thing, we have uh, you know so this we have seen. Let's do the C part. So the first constraint is 13 times x1 So we have 13 times x1, which is 1701 plus 26 times x2, 2196 plus 71 times x3, which is 293. So we will calculate that. Let's see. 13 times 1701 plus 26 times 2196 plus 71 times 293. We end up having 100, 100, and here also we have 100, so this becomes 100, which is same as RHS. Hence, first constraint, this one is what? Binding. Now you see other ones. Similarly, you can put in the value 45 into 1701 plus 10 into 2196 plus 5 into 293. We end up having 99970. So which is not same as our RHS. RHS was something more, right? It was 1 lakh. So therefore, LHS is not equal to RHS. So second one becomes non-binding. Similarly, you can check for these two as well. And I can assure you that these two as well will come as non-binding. So we will have one constraint, which is binding, and other three constraints which are non-binding. Okay. Binding means LHS equals to RHS. Here LHS we saw is not equal to RHS, and therefore that is why they are non-binding. So these are the constraints which we have, and now you need to tell how many decision variable will be zero, right? So we know if LHS equals to RHS, we know it is for sure non-zero, and corresponding to that, the other three will be basically the zero variable decision variables. So these three becomes that. So the answer would be 3 here. And why? Decision variable corresponding to constraints where LHS is not equal to RHS. Okay. So these non-binding constraints would correspond to the decision variable in the dual which have zero value. Okay. So remember this thing, when LHS equals to RHS, it is a non-zero, and when LHS is not equal to RHS, it is a zero. Okay. So let's see the next question. Milo the Goofball is a company that makes football for recreation, games, professional games. The process of making football involves three stages: cutting, dyeing, stage one, swing is stage two, and inspection is stage three. It is seen that making our game football, basically the recreation one, requires 6 minutes in stage one, 15 in that, this in that, and 6 in stage three. On the other hand, P games require so in these stages respectively. On coming planning period of 4 weeks, MTG has 340 variables available in stage 1, 480 available in stage 2, and 300 available in stage 3. Moreover, if required, MTG can avail more hours in stage 1 at an additional cost of 200 per hour. Okay. Moreover, our game footballs generate profit of this per piece. P game football generate profit of this per piece. So 500 and 800. Furthermore, MTG has forecasted maximum number of footballs it can sell is 3000. With an objective to maximize profit, formulate the problem as a linear programming problem and answer the following questions here. So these are the questions which you have. So let's just try to formulate this question into a LPP. Now think, what is the decision variable do you have? You want to maximize the profit, but how do we maximize the profit? We know P type of we have two types of football, R type and P type. So R type is giving us the profit of 500 per piece, and P type is giving the profit of 800 per piece. Now we need to find out how many R type and how many P type footballs shall we make, right? That is how you will decide that. So your decision variable is how many P type and R type football we make. Okay, this is our decision variable. So let's assume n p is that, and we have n r for that. So this is our decision variable, right? And another thing which you would see here is that it was saying, moreover, if required, MTG can avail more hours in stage 1 at an additional cost of this thing. So this part which you are seeing, this will also contribute as a decision variable because they need to decide this thing, right? Do we need to avail extra hours for stage 1 or not? So basically, time for stage 1, this is also one extra decision variable. So how many decision variable are present in the standard form of the primal? So it would be 3, 2 for footballs and 1 for our extra time. Okay. So remember this thing, these are the 3 decision variables. Number of P-type football, number of R-type football, that is, something which helps you in generating the profit, right? So if I'm making NP types of P type of football, so it will become N subscript P into 800, and R type, it would give me profit of N subscript R into 500. But if I'm availing something extra, I will also need to deduct that, right? So if I'm, let's say, availing 2 hours extra, that means I will be deducting minus, basically I would be, subtracting 2 into 200. So that is why we have 3 decision variable. And so let's just first formulate that. So what do we want to maximize? Maximize profit, right? How do I write profit? I know P type of football gives me 800 and R gives me 500. So I will write N P into 800, right? And N R gives me 500. But at the same time, I lose 200 because of every extra T time, right? So let me write it T extra, right? This is what we had here. T extra. So this is what you have. This is what you want to maximize. But there are certain limitations. And what are those limitations? So I will write maximize this subject to what are my constraints? Now read this thing again. It is seen that in making a R game football, it requires 6 minutes in stage 1, 15 minutes in stage 2, 6 minutes in stage 3. Right? Similarly, this thing. The constraint is you have, MTG has 340 hours available in stage 1. So you only have 340 hours for stage 1. So this is my constraint. Should be less than equal to 340 hours. So 340 into 60 minutes. And this should be basically, how much time P type football takes in stage 1 plus how much time R type football takes in stage 1. So this is basically taking stage 1 6 minutes in stage 1 and P requires 12. So I have P into 12 and this NR into 6. So NR into 6, that 6 times NR plus, I think, 12, right, for P. 12 for P. This thing should be less than this much minute, right? Because if I'm manufacturing, let's say, this much amount for an recreational football, so every football will take 6 minutes and every professional football will take 12 minutes. So 6 into NR plus 12 into NP should be less than this thing. So this is my stage 1 constraint. Similarly, you will have for stage 2. We have stage 2 के लिए we have 480 hours total. So let me write that 480 into 60, and you can write again same way NR plus something NP. So NR will take your 15 minute and this will take 9. So 15 and 9. And then we have 6 and 6 both. 6 for this. 6 NR plus 6 NP should be less than equal to 60 minutes. 6 to 0. So how many time do we have? It was 480 and 300. So 480 here. This would be 300. So these are your constraints. Again, there is one constraint more. If you read the last part, it says, moreover, this generate this and MTG has forecasted that maximum number of football it can sell is 30,000, sorry, 3,000. Therefore, you should also make sure this thing NP plus NR should be less than equal to 3,000. So this is what your formulation would look like. Okay. I hope it is clear to you all what I have done. Maybe take some time to read it, do it on your own. Then it will be much, much more clearer what happened here. So let's just see this. Now let's see the questions. What do we have? First question says, how many decision variable are present in the standard form of the primal linear programming problem? So why it is the first one is primal? Because the question was saying we want to maximize profit, right? So therefore, if you want to maximize profit, it has to be the linear programming which I have written. Okay, so it is 3, correct? And then the next question is, how many decision variable are present in the dual linear programming problem? Okay, so they are asking for dual, right? So how do you get dual answer? So for dual, you need to see this thing. How many decision variable present in the dual programming problem, which is based on the standard problem? So decision variable in dual are basically coming from the constraint in the primal. And what are the constraint? These are our 4 constraints. So this would be 4 here. If company decides to make 1500 P football games 100 hour, then how many decision variable in dual programming problem will have value 0? Okay, so if you have 150 here and 100 are here, so you just need to plug in these values and then you can check this thing, right? Because they have not told you they need extra stage 1 hours, you can assume it is going to be 0. Okay. So you can see this thing. These are some related questions, and let's see this. What we have. Uh, P was 1500. So this is what we have. NP is equals to 1500 and NR is equals to 1000, right? I think it was 1000. Correct. So now we need to check these things. So we will just plug in these values and we will evaluate. If I have 6 into NR is 1000 plus 12 into NP is 1500. Okay. This gives me 24,000. So first constraint basically gives me 24,000 in the LHS. RHS is, you know, what? We have 340 into 60, right? So 340 into 60. So we get 20,400. So now you see, this is what we have, right? And this is what we would be needing if we are purchasing, if we are making this much. So this is what we had, right? We have access to 20,400 minutes, but we need 24,000 minutes, right? So this is leaving us with some deficit, right? We need more hours. How many minutes do we need? 24,000 is what we want, but we have 20,400. So we are left with 3,600 minutes. And this minute, if you translate into hour, it would become 60 hours. Okay. So basically, we need 60 hour more in stage 1. Okay. So this one is obviously correct. If the MTG decides to make this, then which of the following will purchase additional capacity in stage one? Okay, they have to purchase because they need 60 R more, right? They want if they want to produce 1500 P and 100 R, they need to basically have 24,000 minutes in your stage one. But with the given condition of 340 hours, you cannot do that thing. So that is why you need to make sure that you purchase some extra hours, and those would be 60 hours. Okay, so this is one thing. Now let's get back to this part. If company decides to make 1500 PN, then how many decision variable in dual will have value 0? So again, you just need to check the same thing. LHS equals to RHS thing. First one is not. So this will obviously account to 0 variable. Then we have this thing, 15 NR plus this thing. So we have 15 into NR was 1000, right? NR was 1000 plus 9 into NP was 1500. Okay. So this gives me 28,500. So we have 28,500 here. And the LHS is, let me use some another symbol. Let's say divider. So the LHS is 480 into 60. What do we have? 28,800. Again, it is a not equal to, but here we are well within the condition. Then we are into third condition. So third condition says 6 times this, 6 times that. So 6 into 100, sorry, 1000 plus 6 into 1500, right? These many minutes we need. And this will basically mean 250 hours. We have 300 hours. So this is also okay. This would also be a same situation. You have 1500 here and we have 300 into 60, 1800,000 minutes here. So all these three are, non-binding constraint, right? Because their LHS is not equal to RHS. Now you see this one, we also have the same thing. 1500 plus 1000, we have 2500. So again, 2500 is not same as 3000. Therefore, all the four variables which you are seeing, they are non-binding. And we know this thing, uh, you know, if you have a non-binding constraint, then it is supposed to give you a corresponding zero variable. So for non-binding, you just count that number. And because we have four non-binding constraint, so therefore this should also be 4. Okay. If the company decides to make this thing, 1500p, 100R, then how many decision variable? Because we have four non-binding constraint, this will be the answer. Now let's see this thing. If the company decides to make this, then what will be objective function value for the primal linear programming problem, right? So this is what you have. Now if I go with this approach, right? So this is my objective function value, NP into 800, NR into this. We have 1500 professional balls. So I will have 1500 into 800 plus 1000 into I think 500. But because we also need 60 hours extra, right? So that is why I will be paying this charge. And the charge was clearly mentioned. I can purchase extra hours in stage 1, but I will pay 200 per extra hour. Therefore, I will be removing 60 into 200, right? So this 200 for 60 hours. So I will solve this equation. What do I have? 1500 into 800 plus 1000 into 500 minus 200 into 60 hours. Please be cautious of the number system which you are using. If you are using minutes, of the units which you are using, if you are basically using minutes, make sure everything is in minutes. If you are using hours, everything should be hours, because here I think a lot of people will calculate the difference, right? What is the extra amount we need, but that would be in minute, and you have rates per hour, right? 200 rupees per hour of extra time in stage 1. So you need to convert the difference back. I was getting 3600 difference. I need to convert this 3600 minutes into, back to hours. So basically I need 60 hours extra. And for 60 hours extra, I would be paying 60 into 200. So this is what you do. Okay. And this is what the profit would look like. Okay. This is what your objective function value would look. This question. So you see, if the MTG decides to this, what is the objective function value for primal linear programming problem? So as you would have seen, all the questions need to, basically identify how much, we need to produce, how much we need to do, and all that stuff. So that is your decision variable. Then you read the problem statement, you find, okay, I cannot exceed that. I need to do this thing minimum. These are your constraints. And then you decide, is it maximizing or minimizing? Based on that, you proceed further. So this was one question more on your primal dual. Let's go to next question. So this is the next question. It says you solve a primal linear programming problem with maximization objective, three decision variable and two constraints of less than equal to type. And again, non-negativity constraint, and you realize that first constraint is not binding. That is, LHS is not equal to RHS, and second constraint is binding. The question says four option. There are three decision variable in dual. Dual variable corresponding to second constraint is zero. There are two decision variable in dual. Dual variable corresponding to second constraint is non-zero. So how do we do that thing? First of all, it is asking how many decision variables are there, and second thing would be what do we have? So you see this thing, we have two constraints in the primal, therefore we would have two. So we have two constraints in primal, that means two decision variable in dual. So this is correct. And then because we know this is LHS equals to RHS, therefore corresponding to the second constraint, I will have a non-zero. And if I had any option for this constraint, I would have a zero. So this is what you have, because we don't have any statement with respect to first constraint. That is why I'm not saying, but you should know whenever LHS equals to RHS, your corresponding decision variable is non-zero. Whenever LHS is not equal to RHS, the corresponding decision variable is going to be zero.